You owe Camden an apology. That was the sentence that shattered the little dignity I had left. I was still holding her coat. My hand went numb. Kaylin didn't even look at me when she said it. She was busy wiping mascara flakes from under her eyes and checking her phone again, probably to see if he'd texted back. We were standing in the middle of our apartment, the one we'd painted together, the one I foolishly thought felt like home. Let me rewind. Not far, just 4 hours. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. Not of anything grand, just us. I'd cooked, lit candles, which she hates, played that playlist she made for our second anniversary. But Kaylin walked in late, didn't comment on the food, and made a beeline for the wine rack. She downed half a glass before I finished setting the plates. I asked, rough day? She said no. What? I should have known. 15 minutes into dinner, the buzzer rang. It was him, Camden, her best friend. The guy who gets her in ways I never will. The guy who once accidentally called her babe in front of me and laughed it off. He didn't even pretend to be surprised by the dinner table. Oh, he smirked, hope I'm not crashing anything. But he was. He always was. He walked in like he lived here, grabbed the chair next to her, not across from her. I watched as she poured him wine before I could even offer. I sat there like some background character in my own home, watching them exchange inside jokes I didn't understand. Finally, I asked calmly, why is he here? Kaylin looked genuinely confused, like I'd asked why the sky was blue. He needed a night out, she said. You always say you want to get to know him better. I never said that. Camden leaned back, chuckled, and said, come on, Ev, don't be stiff. I'm not trying to steal your girl. And that's when Kaylin laughed. That tight-lipped, half-guilty, please don't make this weird laugh that people use when something is too close to the truth. I stood up. I didn't throw anything. I didn't yell. I just looked at her and said, you disrespected me. You turned our night into his. That's when she dropped the line. Cool. Flat. Unbothered. You owe Camden an apology. An apology for being uncomfortable in my own apartment with a man who constantly hovers at the edge of what I once thought was love. I went silent, numb. Then I walked to the bedroom, opened a suitcase, and started folding shirts. Slowly, like I'd rehearsed it in a dream. She followed me halfway down the hall and said, are you serious right now? She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was texting. To him. In that moment. While I packed. That was the moment I realized I wasn't in a relationship. I was in a waiting room. And I was the one keeping the door closed. But here's the part one still can't explain. Later that night, after I left, Camden sent me a voice memo. Not a text. Not a call. A voice memo. And when I played it, everything changed. I didn't open Camden's voice memo right away. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, heart pounding like I was defusing something. The preview just showed 0:28. 28 seconds that felt radioactive in my hand. I was sitting in my car, parked 2 blocks from our apartment. Well, her apartment now. Hands still trembling from how fast I'd stuffed my suitcase. The zipper was split open, one of my socks sticking out like it was trying to escape too. Finally, I pressed play. At first, all I heard was a low chuckle. Then his voice came in, smug and deliberate. Everett, man, don't hate the player, all right? Kaylin was never really yours to begin with. I figured you knew that by now. That was it. That was the whole memo. 28 seconds of a man laughing at me from inside my own life. He sounded like he was lounging on our couch, my couch, maybe even using the same pillow I'd bought her last Christmas. I sat there in the dark, phone in one hand, memories in the other, and tried to process what I'd just heard. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was embarrassment. And then came this strange, paralyzing clarity. I realized I'd spent the last 3 years excusing what I knew was happening in front of me, ignoring instinct, swallowing pride, nodding through things I didn't understand because I didn't want to seem controlling. But you know what's worse than losing someone? Realizing they were never yours. Just a version of them, edited for your comfort. I drove to a 24-hour diner just off the highway, sat at the back booth with cold pancakes and a full battery. I stared at my phone again and did what I swore I wouldn't. I went into Kaylin's social media. I scrolled back through photos, posts, comments I had skimmed past when we were still happy. It was all there, like a digital graveyard I had never bothered to walk through. Camden was everywhere. Subtle but constant. Every trip I couldn't join, he was tagged. Every quote she posted about real connection or never settling, he'd liked it within minutes. And the captions, I don't know how I didn't see it before. There was a language between them that I wasn't fluent in. Then, one comment from last month stopped me cold. Kaylin had posted a black and white photo of a beach bonfire. No people in it, just waves, sand, a pair of shoes near the edge of the frame. Her caption read, "Some nights aren't meant to be remembered out loud." Camden's comment was just 3 emojis, fire upside down face locked. I didn't know what they meant. I still don't, but I knew they weren't for me. I didn't sleep that night. I drove to a motel 20 miles outside the city and sat with the TV on low just to hear a voice that wasn't mine. I thought about everything, how we met, what I gave, what she took, and how I kept giving even when I had nothing left. But the real twist? That came the next morning. I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You don't know me, but I thought you deserved to know the truth about Kaylin and Camden. Meet me, please." There was an address. No name. No explanation. Every instinct told me to ignore it. But curiosity? It has a way of grabbing you by the collar and dragging you into places your common sense would never go. I got in my car, and I drove straight into a truth I wasn't prepared for. I told myself I was only going out of curiosity. I told myself I wouldn't get pulled back in, that I was just going to hear them out, figure out what this stranger knew, and walk away. But if I'm honest, I think some part of me already knew, deep down, that this wasn't going to be something I could forget in an hour, or a day, or maybe ever. The address was a quiet residential street on the outskirts of Bellevue. Nothing suspicious, just middle-class homes, trimmed hedges, a wind chime tapping lazily on someone's porch. I parked across the street, watching the house for several minutes. No movement, no signs of a trap. My heart was thudding so loud I could hear it in my throat. Then the front door opened. A woman stepped out onto the porch. Late 30s maybe. Faded blue hoodie, gray joggers, messy bun. She looked around like she was expecting someone else, until her eyes landed on me. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just gave a small nod and went back inside. I don't know why I got out of the car. Maybe because I couldn't stand not knowing. Maybe because I'd already lost so much, I figured I had nothing else to lose. Her name was Amber. She didn't shake my hand, just gestured for me to come in, and I followed her into a small, dimly lit living room. A cat darted out from under the couch and disappeared down the hallway. There was a corkboard on the wall near the kitchen, cluttered with sticky notes, dates, and photos, some with Kaylin in them. "Okay," I said, try not to sound completely overwhelmed. "You said you had something I needed to know." She didn't sit down. She just stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "I dated Camden," she said. "That was not what I expected. For 2 years," she continued. "Off and on, mostly off, but it wasn't always like that. At first, I thought he was charming, funny, generous. Then I realized Camden's generous with whatever doesn't belong to him, especially people." She walked over to the corkboard, pulled off a photo, and handed it to me. It was from a New Year's party 2 years ago. I was in the corner of the frame, blurry, holding a red cup. Kaylin was front and center. Camden had his arm around her waist. They weren't looking at the camera. They were looking at each other. "I took this," Amber said. And that night, they disappeared for about 40 minutes. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. "I didn't tell you to hurt you," she said, softer now. "I told you because that night in Santa Fe, the one they always joke about, it wasn't a joke. That's when it started." I finally sat down. Amber sat too, across from me, legs folded like she was bracing for impact. I found emails, Everett. A lot of them. He used to leave his Gmail logged in on my laptop. The things they wrote to each other, they weren't just flirty. They were planned, strategic. She told him when you'd be out of town. She warned him which friends were suspicious. It was like a game to them. I could feel my lungs compressing. Every time she spoke, it was like another brick was added to the weight already on my chest. She paused. "You want to know the worst part?" I didn't respond. I didn't have the voice left. She wasn't just cheating with him. She was helping him. My head snapped up. Helping him with what? Amber hesitated. Then she reached into a drawer, pulled out a flash drive, and handed it to me. "I think you'd better see for yourself." I stared at it. Just a tiny piece of plastic. but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my palm. "What's on it?" I asked. She stood, walked to the door, and before opening it, said, "Everything you need to finally stop making excuses for her." I left without another word. I didn't trust my legs to carry a conversation. I didn't go back to the motel. I drove straight to the library downtown, found a quiet computer station, and plugged the flash drive in. And what I found on that drive, it didn't just confirm my suspicions. It exposed something I never could have imagined in 100 lifetimes. The computer hummed to life as I slid the flash drive into the USB port. My palms were sweaty against the laminate desk, and the fluorescent lighting above me flickered just enough to feel like I was in a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. Part of me still believed that nothing on that drive would be worse than what I already knew. That Kaylin had emotionally left me long before I walked out with a half-zipped suitcase. That the voice memo from Camden had been the final blow. But I was wrong. As the folders opened, I saw it wasn't just one file. There were 12. Each one was labeled with a date. The oldest dated back almost 2 years. The most recent was from last week. I clicked on the most recent first. It was a screen recording, captured from Camden's computer. I watched as he logged into what looked like a shared Google Drive. Inside were photos of Kaylin, not the kind that get posted on Instagram. These were strange. Some were from across the street, through windows. Some were candid, in her office, her car, or standing next to people I didn't know. There were folders titled things like confirmed patterns, safe zones, and, chillingly, persuasive material. And then I realized these weren't Camden's files on Kaylin. These were Kaylin's files on other people. I froze. It took me longer than I care to admit to realize what I was looking at. Names, dates, audio clips, screenshots of text conversations with people I didn't recognize. Some showed clients, others colleagues. One folder was labeled Hinson, leverage. Another was Sophie, probable risk. She was tracking people, cataloging them. Not for fun, not for curiosity, for leverage. I clicked on a Word document titled Marlowe Strategy. My stomach turned. That was the same rooftop restaurant I took her to last month. The dinner where I'd brought that small wooden box with the vintage typewriter key inside, the K for Kaylin. The document was a script, a literal script. And as I read through it, I saw every word that had come out of her mouth that night. Nearly verbatim was written there. Lines like, "Act appreciative, but avoid emotional depth. He'll offer a gift. Shift topic to Camden before he gives it." She knew I'd bring something. She knew I'd try to make it meaningful. She wasn't reacting naturally. She was executing. I clicked on another folder, Everett Control Measures. I don't remember breathing as I opened it, but I remember what I saw. Screenshots of my personal emails. Conversations with my mom about Kaylin. My search history. A few grainy screenshots of therapy forum I posted on under a fake name when I was struggling last winter. She knew everything. But what shook me most wasn't the invasion. It was how calculated it all was. Notes were attached. Patterns of withdrawal when questioned. Guilt easily triggered by conflict. Ideal for long-term manipulation due to conflict-avoidant tendencies. I wasn't just her boyfriend. I was a project. A controllable one. Someone she could use as cover. Polite, passive, dependable Everett. The man who wouldn't ask too many questions. The man who'd quietly disappear the moment she needed him to. The rest of the folders, some of them were even worse. There were messages between Kaylin and Camden about clients of her firm. Branding leaks. NDA violations. How to get people to sign off on things they didn't understand. I sat back in the chair. Everything was swimming. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I wasn't looking at betrayal anymore. I was looking at a network. A pattern. Something much darker than infidelity. Kaylin hadn't just lied. She'd built a life out of lies. And I had been one of them. But before I could process any more, my phone buzzed. A message. From Kaylin. 3 words. "We need to talk. No puntuación. No explanación." I stared at it, then looked back at the screen. The file's still open. Her system exposed. My own emotions crushed under a wave of clarity. She wanted to talk? After everything? I closed the laptop. I wasn't ready to talk. I was ready to expose. I didn't respond to her text. I stared at it for hours. I watched the screen dim and wake back up again like it was breathing. Like the phone itself was nervous to see what I'd do. Part of me wanted to block her and vanish. Another part, the broken part, I guess, still needed answers. But mostly, I just wanted to see her face when I mentioned the word leverage. By morning, I had barely slept. I'd gone through every folder on the flash drive twice, made copies, backed everything up to a private cloud I created under a burner alias. I wasn't just Everett anymore. I was a version of myself I didn't recognize, cautious, methodical, and just angry enough to be brave. I texted her one word back. When? She replied almost instantly. Today. Noon. My place. Not our place. Her place now. She was reclaiming it already. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was that the door was already open. Not wide, but cracked. Enough that it felt more like an invitation than an accident. My gut tightened. I pushed it open slowly and stepped inside. She was standing by the window, back turned, in a gray sweater and jeans I didn't recognize. Her hair was tied up, loose, lazy, like she hadn't slept either. But what stopped me cold wasn't her. It was the wall behind her. The corkboard was gone. In its place was a blank whiteboard with just one sentence written in red dry erase marker. Who told you? I couldn't speak. I wasn't even sure I was breathing. She turned slowly, arms folded, and said, "You saw it, didn't you?" I nodded once. Her expression didn't flinch. Then she walked over, uncapped the marker, and added beneath it, "What do you want?" The silence between us was unreal. Even the city outside felt like it was holding its breath. "I want the truth," I said finally. She looked at me like I was a child who had wandered into traffic. "Truth," she said. "You want the truth?" Everett, the truth doesn't exist in black and white. It lives in the gaps, the unspoken, the assumptions. She sat down on the arm of the couch and tapped her fingernails against her knee. "Amber showed you the files, didn't she?" I didn't respond. She smirked. Of course she did. She's always been sloppy. That was when I realized something vital. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't angry. She was prepared for this. She stood again and walked past me into the kitchen. The sound of the kettle being filled echoed like gunshots in the quiet space. When she came back, she held 2 mugs. "Place one in front of me." "I didn't poison it," she said casually. "This isn't some crime movie." "Then what is it?" I asked. Kaylin tilted her head. "It's survival. It's strategy. You think you were the only one I ever cataloged? Do you have any idea what it's like being underestimated in every room you walk into? I learned a long time ago that people don't respect empathy. They exploit it. So I flipped the game. You used me." "No," she said sharply. "I chose you. Because you were kind. Because you were decent. But even decent men will abandon you if they think you're not the version they made up in their heads." I sat down slowly. My legs fell hollow. She looked me dead in the eye. "Camden was the distraction. You were the foundation. You kept the world from seeing what I was really doing." "And what were you doing?" I asked, nearly whispering. Her smile faded. "Getting out," she said. "Out of what?" Kaylin walked back to the whiteboard, wrote one more word under the questions. "Debt." And then she looked at me and said, "Everett, I never cheated on you. Not physically, not emotionally, not the way you think. But if you think this ends here, if you think a few screenshots and emails are going to bring the whole thing down, then you've been more naive than I ever thought." I stood, heart racing. "Then why call me here?" "Because if someone gave you that flash drive, someone broke the chain. And I need to know who." She took a slow sip of her tea and smiled faintly, almost like she pitied me. "Otherwise, Everett, you're in more danger than you realize." I left Kaylin's apartment with her voice still echoing in my ears. "Whoever gave you that flash drive put you in danger. Not me. That should have been the end of it. I should have walked away, burned the whole mess to the ground in my memory, and disappeared into some quiet town where no one knew my name. But that's the thing about betrayal. Once it rewires your sense of reality, you stop trusting silence. You start needing to know everything. And what Kaylin had just implied, that someone beyond her was involved, shattered the last wall holding me back from the truth. When I got back to the motel, I locked the door, drew the curtains, and turned off my phone. Then I powered on the laptop again. I opened the Everett Control Measures folder for the 3rd time, reading through her notes like I was studying a playbook written by someone who'd never loved me, only observed me. There was one line I hadn't noticed before. If subject E ever finds out, trigger contingency with R. I had no idea who R was. But the next morning, I got a clue. A plain white envelope was slid under the motel door. No handwriting, just a single typed line on a half-folded sheet of paper. You're asking questions louder than you think. Stop while you still can. I stared at it for minutes before picking it up. My heart was beating so loud it felt like the walls were vibrating. I checked outside. The lot was empty except for an old minivan and a delivery truck 2 doors down. I went back in, triple-locked the door, and grabbed my phone. Amber didn't answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. The calm I'd been faking since this all began snapped in half. I tossed my phone on the bed and grabbed the flash drive from my bag. I knew there had to be someone buried in the metadata of those files that would lead me to R. Maybe Kaylin wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Maybe someone had kept tabs on her too. So I started digging. I used every piece of half-forgotten tech knowledge I had from college. File histories, author tags, timestamps. And finally, in one of the deep-nested folders Kaylin had mirrored from Camden's account, I found a screen recording she must have saved by accident. It was a video, shaky, poor audio, showing a video call between Camden and another man. The other man's face was pixelated, blurred, but his voice wasn't. Low, calm, controlled. You're getting sloppy, he said to Camden. She's improvising too much. That's not what we discussed. Camden laughed. It's under control. She's got Everett wrapped. The man paused. We don't care about Everett. We care about the signatures, the brands, the timeline. I know, Camden said. She'll deliver. Just give it a week. The screen recording cut off there. No context. No names. When the corner of the video window, for just one frame, I saw an email address flash across the top bar. It ended in at rutherfordconsulting.net. I typed the name into a burner browser and found it almost instantly. Rutherford Consulting. Private strategy firm. No social media. No listed staff. Just a sterile website with 2 sentences on the homepage. We manage what others can't control. We clean up what others leave behind. My blood turned to ice. I suddenly understood that Kaylin's game wasn't just personal. It wasn't just about leverage or trust or even me. It was business, corporate blackmail, internal sabotage, asset manipulation. Kaylin wasn't a mastermind. She was a puppet, an asset. Camden was just a handler. And I was a liability that had woken up. I packed everything, laptop, notes, the flash drive, and I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed movement, needed to stay ahead of whatever this thing was becoming. It wasn't until I stopped for gas 2 towns over that I noticed the same delivery truck from the motel lot parked in the corner of the station. No logo, no Platz, and no driver in sight. I stood frozen at the pump. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. The message said, "You shouldn't have watched the video." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go back to the motel. And in that moment, somewhere between total fear and complete exhaustion, I realized something. I wasn't the weak one anymore. I was the one who knew too much. And I was still alive. For now. 3 days passed. 3 days of rotating motels, switching cars, changing my clothes in gas station bathrooms like I was running from a crime I hadn't committed. Every time I passed a black SUV or saw someone glance twice at me, my skin crawled. I knew it was paranoid. I also knew I wasn't wrong. By day 4, I made the decision. I wasn't going to run anymore. If what I'd found led to Rutherford Consulting, then that's where I needed to go. Not as a victim. Not even as Everett, the guy who once bought his girlfriend a handmade pendant for no reason other than he loved how she smiled when she wore blue. No, this time, I'd walk in as the man who had proof. The man who could blow open whatever quiet storm they'd been brewing behind glass doors and corporate fronts. The firm's listed office was in a high-rise on the edge of downtown, a district where buildings looked like they were built more for intimidation than function. Frosted glass, chrome handles, no signage beyond the name etched faintly near the entrance, Rutherford. I walked through the revolving door just before noon. The lobby was quiet, sterile, too perfect. No front desk. Just an elevator with a touchscreen panel and a single button glowing faintly. 33rd floor. I pressed it. The elevator rose in silence. No music, just the soft whisper of motion and my own heartbeat picking up speed. When the doors opened, I expected a reception area. Instead, I was met by a wide hallway with cream walls and a single black door at the end. I walked toward it slowly, my footsteps swallowed by the plush carpet. The door opened before I reached it. A man stood there, mid-50s, gray suit, expression like he'd been expecting me for years. "Mr. Clark," he said. I didn't correct him. I hadn't given that name. Not to anyone. He gestured for me to enter, and I stepped into a minimalist room. Black leather chairs, a long glass table, and a large monitor built into the wall. No windows. No paperwork. No names. He motioned for me to sit. "You've caused quite a stir, you know." "I didn't come here to stir anything," I said. "I came to end it." The man smiled faintly. "Then you should know. Nothing ends unless we say it does." He reached into a sleek drawer and slid a black folder across the table. My name was printed on it. Not just Everett. My full name, including the middle name I never use. Inside were pages. Dozens of them. Reports, logs, transcripts. But it wasn't about Kaylin. It was about me. Everything. From the moment we met. From the first gift I gave her to the last password I changed. The job interviews I failed. The therapy sessions I stopped. Even the donation I made anonymously last year to my college fund. All of it was cataloged. Analyzed. "What is this?" I asked, my throat dry. He leaned back. "It's your profile. You think you were watching Kaylin? She was just one thread. You were the data stream we cared about." I felt my stomach drop. "You're using people," I said. "For what? Leverage? Corporate intel? Blackmail?" He didn't flinch. "For control. For security. For information. It's not illegal to predict behavior. It's profitable." "And Camden?" "Amber." Camden was a recruiter. One of the good ones. Until he got too close. Amber made it personal. That was her mistake. He stood and walked to the screen. With a quick tap, it flickered to life. Footage filled the monitor, grainy, but clear enough. It was me, sitting alone in the motel, rewatching the files, typing, recoiling at what I saw. "You're not off the grid, Mr. Clark," he said. "There is no grid." I stood. "I'm done. I'll leak this." He turned, finally showing emotion, just a flicker of amusement. "To whom? The news? The police? This isn't a scandal. It's a system. You're not even a blip." I stared at him, adrenaline flooding my veins. He walked back toward me and placed one hand on the folder. "You don't have to fight this," he said. "You can help." My voice cracked. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, "we've seen what happens when you're pushed. And we like it. Kaylin was phase 1. You passed. You've adapted. You survived. Now we'd like to offer you something better than revenge." I didn't move. I couldn't. "Join us," he said. "We'll make sure you're never used again." And in that moment, I realized something so terrifying it stopped my breath. They weren't trying to silence me. They were trying to recruit me. The offer hung in the air like smoke. Join them. Step out of the chaos and into something controlled. Give up uncertainty in exchange for power. Become a man they thought I'd proven I could be. The version of myself that could be weaponized, tracked, monetized. The man they groomed me into without my consent. The man Kaylin had been helping create. I stood there for what felt like an hour. That sterile room pulsing with invisible tension. I could see my reflection in the glass surface of the table. Unshaven, tired, a man unrecognizable from who I was just weeks ago. But what struck me most wasn't how far I'd fallen. It was how far I'd come. I looked back at the man across the table. Still watching. Still waiting. "No," I said quietly. He blinked. "Excuse me?" I said no. "I'm not playing your game." He smiled without warmth. "Everett, you misunderstand. You're already in it. Then I'll walk." "You think you can?" "No," I said, lifting the black folder they'd made on me. "But I know you won't stop me. Because if you really wanted to destroy me, you would have done it already. This isn't a threat. It's a job interview." He straightened, the smile thinning. "Goodbye," I added, and then I turned and walked out. No one followed. No alarms. No threats. The elevator waited quietly, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just looked into the face of a machine built to dismantle people from the inside out and said no. I walked through the city for hours. No plan. No calls. I deleted every file I had except one backup. locked in encrypted storage under a name only I would recognize. I didn't need it for revenge. I needed it to remind myself that I had once been lied to, used, twisted, and survived. I got an apartment out of state. Small. Upstairs unit. Quiet neighbors. I found work at a local print shop. Low stress, low noise. No more passwords. No more tracking. Just paper, ink, and the occasional smile from the woman at the sandwich shop downstairs who asked me about books I'm reading. Amber moved out of the city. She sent me one message a few weeks later. They won't touch you. I made sure. Keep her head down. I never responded. But I hope she found peace, too. As for Kaylin, she vanished. I never heard from her again. Maybe she was pulled deeper into the machine. Maybe she burned out. Or maybe she found her own way out, the same way I did. Not with fire, not with revenge, but with a single step in the opposite direction. Sometimes survival doesn't look like justice. It looks like choosing to start over. Now, on quiet evenings, I sit by my window with a worn notebook and just write, not about her, not about them, but about the version of myself I'm still rediscovering. The one that laughs, the one that trusts, the one that finally understands. I was never weak. I was never disposable. I was just too human for the machine they tried to build. And in a world that thrives on silence, choosing to walk away is the loudest thing you can do.